And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Tuesday morning, IFR from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast. Good VFR over the interior with some marginal VFR here over the western Alaska Range. A little area of IFR over the northern Bering Sea. Otherwise, mostly marginal conditions down across the Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay, VFR, and some IFR here just east of Kodiak Island into the Gulf of Alaska. But farther into the Panhandle there, you can see areas of VFR over the inside waters. And then for the afternoon, IFR shifts right on up into the eastern North Gulf coast, or right along the coastline there, back toward eastern Kodiak Island. VFR, northern Panhandle, marginal to the south. Good VFR over the interior, and IFR holding from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, with some marginal VFR over the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait and down along the southwest coast, Nunivak Island area. Pribilofs, though, IFR with a pretty good area here over the Bering Sea extending down into the western Aleutians. And then for Wednesday morning, still IFR for the North Slope out to the Arctic coast, with IFR in the northern Bering Sea, another zone down here to the south, kind of splitting off there with some IFR from Atka Island up to the near the Pribilofs down to the eastern Aleutians. VFR over the western part of the state here from Bristol Bay right on up into the southern Brooks Range there on the west side. And marginal VFR, Copper River Basin into the Talkeetna Mountains and extending up toward Denali Park area. But IFR right up along the North Gulf coast into the eastern, or right along the east side of Kodiak Island, and marginal for the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, not much change through these areas here. The IFR coming a little farther to the west there, Kodiak with VFR, Shelikof Strait breaking out down toward Akiak, into Bristol Bay, up the western interior. Marginal VFR in the Kuskokwim Valley there, on up toward the lower Yukon River. IFR still for the North Slope Arctic coast and through the Bering Strait now into the northern Bering Sea. Kind of mixed conditions onto the south toward the Aleutians. Passes Anatuvik and Atigan, both IFR for the day on Tuesday. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. Same forecast for rainy, looking good tomorrow. VFR flying, windy, same forecast, good VFR. Isabel, VFR. Mentasta, VFR, possibly becoming marginal VFR in the afternoon hours. And then for Tanita, should stay VFR the entire day on Tuesday. Portage looking good as well. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here, 8,000 feet up over the northeast interior into the Northwest Territories there. And then about 4,000 to 6,000 feet across southern Alaska and the Panhandle. With the colder air and those northerly winds, we've got the surface coming all the way down south of the Pribilof Islands, 2,000 feet here, coming down to the eastern Aleutian areas and then rising back up to about 6,000 feet out to the west. Icing, possibility of some icing here over the central Bering Sea, just grazing St. Paul Island there, and could be some considerable moderate rime icing for the western Arctic coast, and maybe around Yakutat there with a little bit more widespread moderate rime icing pushing in to the southern Panhandle. From there, looking at the jet stream, well to the south of the area here, cutting in across Vancouver Island there at about 160 knots. So more of a easterly lighter flow becoming kind of more variable over interior Alaska. And out to the, we're looking at 9,000 feet here. We've got north to northwest winds at about 45 knots out over the central Bering Sea. Pretty light here over the interior and into the Gulf. Southeast winds, not too bad, maybe 35 knots for the Panhandle. Up to 40 knots at 9,000 feet, or at 3,000 feet for the southeast coast there in the southern areas with that low just off to the southwest. A couple of weak lows over the interior. Keep the wind field variable and light there, but the northerly flow here between the lows in the interior and some higher pressure way out to the west there, continuing to produce some pretty strong winds through the Bering Strait up to 50 knots, 35 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. So look for some considerable moderate turbulence there for the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow out toward Unalaska Island. Possibly out here for Kiska and Amchitka Island, St. Lawrence Island, and the western Seward Peninsula up to Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, maybe Point Ley. Otherwise, not too bad here. Maybe some light to isolated moderate turbulence here for the southeast coast.